Pleasant day, class! Welcome to Horticulture module for grade 10. This focuses on Quarter 1, Week 4 discussion. So let's get started. Let's begin with the environmental aspect of nursery work. In this lesson, you will learn the environmental aspects of nursery work. It is important that as plant grower, there are guidelines that need to be accomplished in order to upkeep crop production as a good practice. Every endeavor is an individual position when it comes to adopting and implementing eco-efficient practices. These are needed such that its adoption in practice are benchmark by which every plant grower must know and practice. Before we proceed, let us know what is the impact of horticulture in the environment. Horticultural production is primarily involved in the intensive use of resources such as land, water, labor, and inputs such as fertilizers and pesticides. The use of such resources in a concentrated space and time has the potential to negatively impact on the local environment and worker welfare. In addition, the transport of horticultural produce over long distances, particularly by air transport, is known to have an impact on the global environment. Therefore, plant nurseries are increasingly considering environmental performance as part of their planning and operational procedures. Adopting eco-efficient agricultural practices will not only benefit the environment, they will also improve business operational efficiency and reduce costs. There are guidelines that need to be observed in doing nursery work. First, safety equipment. Of course, in the nursery, there are various equipment that needs to be safe enough to use by workers. Number 2, personal protective equipment or PPE. This is the primary protection of the worker while performing their work in the nursery. Number 3, safe work methods and operating procedures. It is always goes to the saying that safety first. So, the management of the nursery need to ensure safe work methods in their workers. 4, safe use of tools in a safe environment. It involves the appropriate tools applied in proper use, place, and time. Let's focus first on personal protective equipment or PPE. It is required where there is a risk of injury or contamination to you or others. Now, let's discuss the different PPE that need to be used by workers in the nursery, especially when dealing with chemicals. First is the respirator. From the picture, which do you think is not considered as safe to use? That's right. It is only a dust mask. Dust mask will not protect your lungs from pesticide. It can pass through it. Below is a half-faced respirator with cartridges and a full-face respirator with cartridges. Wear a respirator with cartridges and filters that protect against the type of pesticide you will be using. Note, if you ever need to use a respirator, you must check with your supervisor that the cartridges are not expired and that you are fitting it correctly. Next is the gloves. Below are the pictures of the different gloves. Which do you think is the appropriate to use by nursery worker? Correct. Don't use the kind of rubber gloves you'd use to do the dishes. This won't protect you. Don't use leather gloves. They may be tough, but leather will absorb pesticides and cannot be properly cleaned. Use unlined gloves made of neoprene, nitrile, or PVC. The pesticide label may specify what type of gloves is required. For adequate coverage, they need to be long enough to cover the wrist, may when folded and still be covered by the sleeve. Remember to check gloves for leaks and replace your gloves regularly. Next is the boots. Below are the pictures of different boots. Which do you think is the most properly used by nursery worker? That's right. Unlined rubber boots provide the best protection. While common rubber boots have lining, so be careful of what kind of rubber boots you will choose. Don't wear work boots. Leather and canvas absorb pesticides and cannot be properly cleaned. Next is the wide-brimmed hat. Below are the pictures of different hats. Which do you think is considered as wide-brimmed hat? Correct. Wear a wide-brimmed unlined hat to protect your head and neck. If wearing a rubber rain hat, make sure it does not have a cloth lining. The cloth on this ball cap will absorb pesticide and the neck will be unprotected. Remember, make sure there is no cloth or leather band inside your hat. The band will absorb pesticide and hold it against your skin. Next is the coveralls. Check the label to see what is required for coveralls. Some will ask for chemical resistant, some waterproof, and some water resistant. If the label says you must wear coveralls over a long sleeve shirt and long pants and does not specify which kind to wear, you may choose to wear regular cotton or polyester coveralls if they are not likely to become wet through from sprays, drift, or spillage. If in doubt about the type of coveralls to use, you should select chemical-resistant coveralls to be safe. The picture shows a spray suit and a regular work clothes. Don't use regular work clothes if there is a chance your clothes will become wet with pesticide spray. A spray suit will cover your work clothes and keep you protected from exposure. Next is the goggles. Eyeglasses as well as contact lenses do not provide eye protection. Use an appropriate goggles that will seal the area around your eyes to protect them. Unvented goggles can protect from pesticide vapors as well as splashes. If you wear glasses, be sure the goggles fit over the arms without leaving any gaps. This time, I will show you how to wear a PPE. First, cuff your gloves. This will help prevent a spill from running down the gloves and onto your arms. Next, wear your sleeves over top of the gloves. Third, keep your sleeves done up over your gloves. And last, wear your pant legs outside of your boots. Now, let us identify the PPEs worn by this man. First, brimmed waterproof hat. Goggles. Shirt covering arms. Waterproof gloves. Pants covering legs. Waterproof boots. And half-faced cartridge respirator. We keep on repeating that in wearing an appropriate PPE, we need to check first the label. The following table provides a good guidelines for interpreting common directions given on pesticide labels. When the label says, avoid contact with eyes, skin, and clothing, wear coveralls, gloves, boots, and either goggles or a face shield. When the label says avoid breathing vapors or spray mist, wear a respirator. When the label says may be harmful or fatal if swallowed or absorbed through the skin, wear chemical-resistant gloves, boots, hat, coveralls, and a face shield. When a label says caution corrosive, wear chemical-resistant gloves, boots, hat, coveralls, and face shield. A Danish study looked at a group of 89 vegetable farmers in Cambodia. Because the farmers lack adequate personal protection, nearly 90% had experienced symptoms of acute pesticide poisoning. So you see how important is the wearing of PPEs. Next is care of personal protective equipment. Reduce your risk of exposure by checking each part of your equipment. Who is responsible for equipment? Employers, employees, and supervisors must cooperate to reduce exposure. As an assistant applicator, you may be responsible for the cleanup of your equipment. Check with your supervisor to make sure the responsibilities are clear. Please watch a video showing the proper way to clean your PPE after an application. Credits to the owner.
Hi, I'm Emily Doran, Extension Assistant in the Pesticide Safety Education Program at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Using personal protective equipment, or PPE, reduces the risk of pesticide poisonings for you as an applicator. Some sort of PPE is required by most pesticide labels. You have a lot of options when it comes to PPE, so how do you know what to use? The best place to start is by reading the pesticide label for specific PPE requirements. Let's take a few minutes to look at different types of PPE and how to learn to properly use them. PPE requirements will vary from label to label, and some may not have requirements at all. If the label doesn't have any PPE, we recommend at a minimum wearing a long-sleeve shirt, long pants, socks, and shoes. You could also wear a disposable coveralls like a Tyvek suit to protect your legs and arms. The type of PPE required may be different depending on what you are doing with the pesticide. Those involved in the mixing and loading process often have higher PPE requirements than those applying pesticides. This is because mixer and loaders are exposed to concentrated pesticides, while those applying the pesticides and cleaning equipment may be exposed to diluted pesticides. In addition to the minimum PPE requirements we've just discussed, an apron, safety glasses, or face shield and respirator may be required. Some things to remember about choosing an apron. When you work with highly toxic pesticides, it needs to be chemical resistant and should cover the entire front of your body from your chest to above your knees. The safety glasses must have brow and side guards and fit properly to protect your eyes. You can also use safety glasses that easily fit over your eyeglasses. Another option for protecting eyes is a face shield. A face shield prevents pesticides from coming in contact with your eyes as well as your entire face. There are a number of different types of respirators. We will be focusing today on half-face cartridge respirators. This half-face cartridge respirator prevents you from inhaling the chemical when applying pesticides. This black organic vapor cartridge is required for filtering out pesticides. When applying pesticide, dust, or granules, place the dust covers over the cartridges. These come with the respirator. Store mask and cartridges in Ziploc bag to keep them in good condition and the mask clean. Replace cartridges as needed, such as after 8 hours of continuous use. Do seal checks and ampule testing before each use to ensure proper fit and to determine if the cartridges are fitting properly. Be sure to clean respirators after each use to remove pesticide residue. Read each pesticide label for the specific requirements for mixer and loader and applicators. There are other PPE items that can be useful for applicators in specific situations. Items like rubber boots for use in turf application situations where you may be walking through the treated area, head covering when making applications above your head like spraying trees or tall vegetation or hanging plants in a greenhouse. After the pesticide application, it is important to properly clean your PPE and yourself. Use soap and water to clean all of your PPE before you store it for the next use. Also, be sure to wash yourself with soap and water as soon as possible after the application. The most important thing to remember about PPE is that you have to use the appropriate equipment for each job. You can purchase these items at many locations.
OHS, or Occupational Health and Safety Legislative Requirements and Codes of Practice. It will become a business enterprise involving employer-worker relationships. As the employer, you are responsible to ensure the health and safety of all people working on your farm. Just as you need to know crop management, you also need to know what is required by government occupational health and safety legislation. Now, let us identify the accidents that may happen in the nursery and may require OHS. All farms have dangerous machineries and work situations. People of all ages who work and live on farms are at risk of injury. Children are especially vulnerable to hazards on farms because it is their home as well as a place of work. Young, inexperienced workers are at risk for injuries than older, experienced workers. Next is performance changes which occur with aging can result in reduced balance and reaction time, vision, and hearing impairment. These and other changes affect the aging farmer's ability to work safely. Next, working alone and time pressure also increase the risk of injury. When these injuries occur, especially at critical farming times, they can reduce farm revenues. The Occupational Health and Safety Act will apply to all workplaces, including farms. In our country, the agency that is in charge to take the lead in the conduct of occupational safety and health system, or OSHS, is the Department of Labor and Employment, or the Dole. Dole should monitor the following: Executive Order 301 of OSHC talks about the prevention. Administrative Code of 1987 deals with enforcement. Presidential Decree 6269 or Environmental Certificate Compliance talks about compensation rehabilitation. And ADM Code 1987 deals with updating of health and safety standards and other related OSH policies. The legal basis of its mandate is the Presidential Decree No. 442, Labor Code of the Philippines. The OSHS was created in 1978. Under these standards, such as a set of mandatory rules on OHS which codifies all safety orders and patterned after the standard of other developing countries. The objectives includes the protection of workers from occupational risk and hazards. The coverage is for all workplaces except safety mines. The Rule 1000 general provisions include its aim to protect every worker against injury, sickness, or death. Its scope applies to all places of employment except mines. Under the rule, the duties of the employers are the following. First, furnish safe, healthful working conditions. Second, give job safety instruction. Third, comply with OSHS. And fourth, use approved safety devices. The duties of workers are to cooperate with management, report unsafe condition, and use all safe devices. Precautions in hazardous workplaces must be observed as the exposure to dangerous environmental elements, contaminants, or working conditions must be avoided. These are the government agencies covered by the rule, while these are the NGOs, labor and employer groups. Various academe is also involved. Communication is important in the employer-employee relationship. Communication is said to be the basis of every interpersonal relationship. In fact, effective communication is the key to a healthy and long-lasting relationship. If individuals do not communicate with each other effectively, problems are bound to come. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day! It is indeed a fruitful session for plantitos and plantitas. If you are new to my channel, don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell for you to become updated in my upcoming videos. God bless everyone!